Hey, hello everyone. Good evening. Daniel, Cameron, can you hear me?
Yep, can hear you just fine.
Perfect. Right. So, hello everyone. Welcome to New Narratives Malaysia GE15 Watch Party. And we will be your co-hosts co-host for tonight. My name is Charlene. I'm the Civic Participation Manager. And would Daniel or Cameron, who's with me today, would you like to introduce yourself as well?
Daniel boleh dulu lah.
All right, go ahead then, Daniel.
Hi, my name is Daniel. My pronouns are he, him. I'm with the editorial team, and yeah, I'm excited to. I'm from Indonesia, and I'm excited here to talk about the Malaysian elections here with everyone.
Selamat malam semua. Nama saya Kawai. Saya bersama dengan New Narrative dalam tim Civic Participation dan saya bersama dengan anda dari Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. Cuaca agak renyai-renyai pada malam ini tetapi watch party kami akan berterusan sahaja, tak ada masalah. Kembali kepada anda, Charlene.
Right, thanks for that, Cameron. I may not be able to keep up with your amazing multilingual ability throughout the stream, but glad to have both of you on the call today here with me. And also everyone who's watching right now, thanks for joining us. And just strap yourself in. We're going to be going through some conversation topics tonight about the election. Also, maybe kind of like just talk about our feelings and how's everything been going, featuring some guests who will also be hopping in at various intervals to discuss different topics with us as well. But first off, I guess just want to maybe check with everyone. How's everyone doing? How's everyone feeling? I know Daniel has actually recently just worked on a video explainer, which we will be showing about the elections as well. And Cameron, also, I understand you have been really, really busy with the postal voting efforts here, in Malaysia. But yeah, how's the feeling like in the room? How's everyone, hopeful, excited, anything?
Daniel nak pergi dulu ke? Kena tutup tingkap tak? Tiba-tiba hujan lebat sangat ni.
No, I'm feeling very excited. As you know, again, I'm Indonesian, so I'm well, about like 2 weeks ago, I was lacking a lot of the context coming into this topic, but like working on the video and then like talking with like our team members from Malaysia, it's been quite an eye-opening experience. And it's interesting watching, having sort of that in-depth experience with how another country works and handles and practices their democracy, and the similarities but also differences with how we do it here in Indonesia. So yeah, I'm very interested to see how this turns out.
Baik, bagi saya satu event yang quite interesting, I would say. I've been following the developments agak lama. Dari mula-mula ada ura-ura pembubaran parlimen, sudah saya agak gentar menanti-nantikan tarikh yang keramat yang ternyata bila 9 Oktober bukan, berapa 2 lebih minggu sebelum ni lah, I think, just about that. For on the day itself, actually, it's been really quite hectic. I was in Seremban this morning, and then I was running around South Selangor and KL, passing off postal ballots. That's that's alliteration right there. Passing off postal ballots to returning officers, and really quite interested to see what the results are like tonight. There's been a lot of developments during the campaign trail, and really excited to see what happens.
Great. Yeah, it's been, I think for all of us here at New Narrative, it's been a really busy couple of weeks, especially also, all throughout Malaysia as well with the sudden announcement, I guess, of the dissolution of parliament. But yeah, and it's been an eventful day as well. And I think today we also, tonight we're going to be covering some of these stories and just discussing, I guess, what happens. So yeah, maybe let's very quickly go through some of the things we will be talking about during tonight's watch party. So perhaps we can have the main tab up now. We will be well, first and foremost, I guess, watching the results. So throughout, again, the next 2 hours, we'll be taking a look as the results flood in. Unfortunately, we won't be staying all the way until the wee morning hours, but we will hopefully at least be able to see some of how the results look like as it goes along and provide some commentary. And speaking of commentary, we'll also be playing a little bingo as things go along. And I can see people flooding the chat. Hello to everyone watching. Thanks for being here again. But yeah, so we've also prepared some fun little games. We've prepared a little bingo, if you could have that up as well. And as we all know, throughout, again, the elections, different social media and everything, we all know that there will be interesting things said, interesting events that have happened also all throughout the day or during this eventful night. So just for fun, if any of these things happen or if any of these things are said across any social media that we've noticed, we'll kind of just take this off as the night goes along. And of course, I would like to welcome everyone in the audience also. If you've heard any of these, maybe just like quickly leave us a comment and be like, hey, someone said this, or hey, there was blackout somewhere, like those sort of things. And we'll mark it off the bingo, we'll cross that off. And we'll, as mentioned also, we'll be featuring different guests who will just come in, join us and have a little conversation. Yeah, and I hope everyone has a little bit of fun. Hope you have your beverages ready as well. We embark on this little watch party. So yeah, let's. I remember I mentioned that video explainer that Daniel made about the elections. Daniel, are you ready for us to screen that as like a quick introduction to everybody about the elections?
Yeah, let's watch it together. It'll be good.
Right, sure. Live reaction, Daniel. Let's go.
On November 19th, over 21 million Malaysians are expected to vote.
Malaysia's Prime Minister Ismail Sabri Yaakob dissolved parliament and called snap elections.
Candidates and their supporters throng nomination centres to contest some of 222 parliamentary seats that are up for grabs.
For the first time, 18 to 20-year-olds casting their ballots.
The largest cohort ever to vote thanks to the efforts of Undi 18, lowering the minimum voting age from 21 to 18. And following the political turmoil that has lingered since the Sheraton move in 2020.
It's been 24 hours of political turmoil in Malaysia. The government is in limbo with Prime Minister Mahathir Mohamad resigning.
Muhyiddin Yassin has bowed to pressure to resign, ending 17 months in power.
Many are hoping that this election would bring about a stabler government. The stakes are high, but faith in institutions and politicians are low. So why is it that some people feel like their vote doesn't really matter?
And with just days to go, Malaysia's general election is heating up.
The race is wide open, with no coalition likely to win a simple majority.
Hari mengundi 19 November 2022 hari Sabtu.
First of all, address the elephant in the room. Why am I, an Indonesian, explaining how a Malaysian general election works? And the simple answer is, I'm not. Well, I'm the one explaining. The research for this video was done by Malaysians. In fact, if you want to know more about this topic, we have links to their articles in the description, so check it out if you want to know more about this topic. For now, on to the video. We decided to take a closer look at how elections work, to see how the system really benefits incumbent coalitions and gatekeeps smaller parties out, like PSM, for example. Let's say, out of dissatisfaction with the way things are going, a large grassroots movement decides to form a party. This is how smaller parties like PSM or MUDA, for example, are formed. Now, several things stand in their way. Number one is the first past the post system. First past the post is just another way of saying the party with the most votes wins. Now that sounds pretty reasonable, right? Pretty democratic. The party with the most votes wins. Well, if you take a closer look, you can see just how undemocratic the system can get. Let's use an example. Now, let's say 7 parties are contesting for seats in one of Malaysia's many electoral districts. The 7 parties go head-to-head and the final results are these. Now you can clearly see the Onde-Onde party has the most votes with 20%, followed by the Cendol party with 18%, and then everybody else. The problem here is that the party that wins only has the approval of 1/5 of the entire population, but will get to rule throughout the end of their term. So, where does this leave the smaller parties? Well, according to Malaysian election law, when failing to secure 1/8 of the total votes in an area, they lose their deposits. Let's take a look at the numbers again. The Rojak Party and the Otak-Otak Party each only managed to secure only 10% of the vote, which means that these candidates have failed to meet the 1/8 threshold, which means they just lost their deposits. At this point, they have 2 options. If they're able to raise enough funds, they can run the next elections. But what if they don't have enough funds? On top of the deposit, running an entire election campaign isn't cheap. Well, there's a second option. Join a coalition with the largest party or the second to largest party and hope to win more seats next time. The Rojak Party takes their 10% and goes with the Onde-Onde Party, bringing their numbers up to 30%, and the Otak-Otak Party takes their 10% and goes to the Cendol Party, bringing their numbers up to 28%. See how this works? Over the course of several elections, these 2 coalitions will only grow stronger, while alternative parties grows weaker. Why? Because when voters see the chances of their own party actually winning grow smaller and smaller, they'll take their vote and either split it between the 2 existing coalitions, or they'll vote strategically. Either way, these 2 coalitions just get stronger and stronger. Another problem that we should address is gerrymandering. This is when parties redraw the lines of electoral districts, either to break up the opposing party's supporters into many districts, a practice called cracking, or reduce the value of the opposition's votes by placing them all into one district, a practice called packing. Now, before each election is held, the job of drawing these lines falls to the Electoral Commission, the EC. Now, ideally, the EC would draw these lines impartially and in a way that represents the Malaysian population best. But the Electoral Commission is selected upon the advice of the Prime Minister, meaning incumbent coalition can just stack the commission full of their own loyalists. Okay, so another thing we actually need to talk about is political cost. What is the political cost of these smaller parties joining larger coalitions? First is loss of autonomy. When parties join coalitions, they have to make compromises. The more influence they want, the more policy proposals they have to give up. And usually, the smaller, less influence your party has, the more you have to give up. Even if a party appeals to their voters by being a new and different voice initially, the system forces them to toe in line with the rest of the mainstream parties. This is why some voters will feel betrayed and lose faith in their new party over the course of several elections. They'll just feel like they're reinforcing the way that things are, even if initially they were voting for a new and radical party with new and radical ideas. Now let's talk about the second phenomena that parties can fall victim to: the minimal winning coalition. Say Rojak wants to join Onde Onde's coalition and bring their 10% over. However, since Onde Onde already has a 2% lead on Cendol's coalition, it doesn't actually have to admit all of Rojak's candidates, just the 9% it needs to gain an edge over the other coalition. So this only happens when a coalition needs to secure seats outside of their normal areas and demographics. Regardless of how willing a new party is to compromise, if the incumbent coalition doesn't need their seat, it won't relent on the power it already has. For example, this happened in the run-up to the 2018 election, where Pakatan Harapan formed a coalition with Parti Pribumi Bersatu Malaysia, PPBM, because it needed more rural Malay voters. But it didn't form a coalition with PSM because it felt confident enough in those areas. So now what? What can be done to fix this? Well, you can introduce certain reforms that incorporate proportional representation, primaries, or local elections. Reforms can also be introduced to ensure that the EC remains impartial and independent. And remember, elections are just one part of the political process. Citizens can still join associations, form advocacy groups, advocate as pressure groups, hold elected officials accountable, or even run for office themselves. Remember, it was through youth advocacy that the Malaysian government lowered the minimum voting age in December 2021 instead of the original proposed date of September 2022. So as important as voting is to the political process, it isn't the only avenue of action available to the people.
Well, thank you for making that video, Daniel. I was about to say, actually, if it was up to me, I would have voted for the Onde Onde party. That's my favorite snack. But I mean, you made that video, Daniel. What are some of your thoughts about it? What kind of efforts went into doing that? And maybe could you offer some perspectives on what you learned perhaps about the Malaysian election? Anything that interested you?
It was a very interesting experience. One, because I wasn't very familiar with the way that the system works in Malaysia. So when we started this about 4 or so weeks ago, we were working on a couple of explainer articles, and then it occurred to me that it would be cool if there was also a video to go alongside it. I did not realize how much work that would actually entail, nor how deep that rabbit hole went. But yeah, I'm glad. I'm glad we decided to do this project. As you know, I have to credit a lot of the research that happened for this video was done by a couple of contributors to New Naratif. Greg Lopez is one of them. The other one is Oi Kokin. Their articles are on our Malaysian election landing page, and they're also linked in the description for the video. So if you want deeper, more in-depth explanations, you can find them there as well. So a lot of the research was done by them. What I did was sort of change the language and the way that the message was conveyed so that it would suit a video format. But yeah, it was fun. It was also fun finding out about all the different snacks that you have in Malaysia and how much they, how many similar snacks we share with between Malaysia and Indonesia. So that was fun. Yeah.
Can I just ask something, Alif? Di permulaan video tadi ada footage dari DW yang mengungkapkan nama Ismail Sabri. How much did you cringe when you first heard him pronounce his name?
Well, a little bit, but as you know, I think Indonesia also has that a lot, where when we watch sort of international news coverage, they tend to butcher the names of places and politicians and so forth. So it's at this point, it's like, oh, it happens. Although I have to say that because I'm an Indonesian, we share a lot of, for example, the snacks, where I was using them, to communicate as allegory. I was very worried that I would use the Indonesian pronunciation and not the Malaysian pronunciation. That would cause a lot of confusion, because so that was actually like constantly was running in the back of my mind.
Right, and so I've actually looking through some of the comments that we're getting. Someone's asking about a curry puff party. Maybe for future videos, Daniel, we should include more snacks too.
Of course,
but
of course.
yeah, I like curry puff. I see we have, let's take a look. Some of the first results are coming in already. I think seems like some seats were held by Pakatan Harapan, as well as BN. I believe Wee Ka Siong has held his seat, I think, if I'm not mistaken, Ayer Hitam and Johor. If you can just take a look at that. And on that note, I'm also seeing news of, yep, there we go. Our ATM is still held by Barisan Nasional. And we are having, sorry, this is about the bingo, but there's also, I think we can cross this out because I feel like I remember I saw this on the bingo sheet. Flood disrupting polling stations. Because I believe there was actually constituency in Sarawak that was disrupted due to flood waters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kalau tak silap saya, ada 3 undi di Malaysia, 2 undi parlimen dan 1 undi negeri yang digantung sebelum hari.
Yeah.
Jadi for the Baram, the seat of Baram in Sarawak was the elections were postponed due to flooding and poor weather, so much so that election commission workers were not able to man all the polling stations in the constituency. So elections were postponed there, and elections were also postponed in 2 other constituencies, Tioman and Padang Serai, if I'm not mistaken. The state seat of Tioman and the parliamentary seat of Padang Serai were elections were postponed due to the deaths of the candidates today and yesterday, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I heard about the news as well. That was quite it was really tragic. For the Baram one, actually, I believe voters were actually still attempting to cast their ballots despite the flood waters until they actually announced the postponement of that. We have a question here. Hannah Yo and Yobiyin are saying presiding officers are refusing to sign Form 14 for Pachas. Can you explain what that is, the significance of this for us non-Malaysian viewers, please? Yes, indeed, the news has come in on that. They are claiming that this is going to lead up and hold up in the results. Cameron, actually, do you want to explain a little bit on this? And I can also hop in for that.
Sure, not a problem. So the way vote tallying works for this election is all votes are counted at the individual polling stations, and the results from those polling stations are then relayed to returning officers at the tallying centers, which is one specific center in the constituency. So Form 14 is actually the form where the total number of votes counted after they've been sorted, who wins what, which is spoiled, which is dubious atau ragu, as we say in Malay, and then the numbers are tallied onto the form and are signed by the Pachas and also the Ketua Tempat Mengundi, or the presiding officer lah, as PJ mentioned. So yeah, refusing to sign the Form 14 is actually quite a big deal, I think, because it will significantly hold up the the counting of votes, and potentially, I would say, maybe also cause some legal trouble for the election commission in the future. Sorry.
Yeah, I believe the Pachas, because if Form 14 isn't, we're hearing reports coming in from Titi Wangsa, Setia Wangsa, even Titi Wangsa and Satya Wangsa at least saying that they're having difficulties with the Form 14, but there was some resistance coming from the presiding officers. If there's any updates, I think we'll talk a little bit more about it. But yeah, thank you, Cameron, for that detailed explanation on that. How's the results looking right now? 8 seats in Terengganu with believe PN, that's Perikatan National. Looks like it's a clean sweep. Okay, right.
Not surprising, but we'll just accept that, shan't we?
Yeah, I think there are some seats that are like, everyone's got their eye on as the hot seats for tonight.
Yeah,
But yeah,
we'll definitely be looking at those hot seats, won't we, Charlene?
of course. And I hear voter turnout was at a high today, so I think it's a bit too early to say anything. Not sure any surprises along the way. I believe last count was that voter turnout was beyond 70%, I think, as early as 4 p.m. today. So we're likely to see a higher turnout percentage overall as well. We also have a lot of new voters this round. A lot of young voters coming in. Anyone who's above 18 can vote. A lot of previously unregistered who are now also automatically registered. And that's millions of new ballots coming in and could really make a significant change. Right. I personally, today, we got a comment here. It was great to see so many Malaysian students in the UK exercise their voting right with the postal ballots. Great comment, because we are actually going to discuss postal voting. And Cameron, I know you were really, really involved in this. Perhaps later tonight, we will be touching on this and would like to hear from you, Cameron, on your experience as well. We're also going to have a guest to talk about the challenges, I guess, in postal voting, and all these interesting little stories about how everyone comes together just to bring all of the votes back to Malaysia, which I personally found really inspiring. And I'm also really glad to see different people from different countries, different cities as well, tuning in to watch tonight. I think everyone's just pretty excited about the elections and how this is going to turn out. Is there anything else on a bingo sheet that we can tick off for now? Otherwise, maybe let's very quickly move on to some of our other conversation topics. Let's take a look. Electoral promise of reforms, winning by narrow. Maybe it's too early to take winning by a narrow margin. Let's check and see if other things trends on Twitter. But once again, to our audience, if you see any of these occur on social media or you've heard this, let us know through the comments and we'll cross it out via the bingo. Right, ink washed off. My ink's still here. I'm not sure can everyone see my finger. And it was, yeah, mine is still here. So that's great. Right. Daniel, actually, we wanted to talk a little bit about the comparison, I think, between, again, like when you just mentioned that you learn things about the Malaysian system, and you're from Indonesia. How is the system like over there? Any thoughts on it? Any comparisons or contrasts with the Malaysian system? And how has this, how has the Malaysian elections, how's it being seen right now over in the Indonesian side?
Well, I'll be honest, I have not heard a lot of people talking about it. I know that it's currently being discussed mostly in economic circles because I believe the state budget, correct me if I'm wrong, was passed briefly in October, right before the announcement of like the snap election. But other than that, there hasn't been a lot of like discussions, at least not that I know of in my circles. However, it is interesting seeing how it is mainly interesting seeing how a parliamentary election is conducted. As you know, here in Indonesia, we do have a parliament. We call it the DPR and the MPR. However, for the leadership, for the sort of the executive branch of our country, the presidency, governors and mayors are elected by direct ballot and not indirect ballot. So it's very interesting seeing how the different systems lined up. And it's also very interesting because in Indonesia, there has been talk a lot recently of returning to an indirect ballot where we elect representatives and local representatives, and they will in turn elect our executive leaders. But there's been a lot of pushback and a lot of people arguing that, at least in the Indonesian context, that it was highly undemocratic and reminiscent of more authoritarian times. So that's that's very interesting seeing that sort of happen from my perspective at least.
Boleh saya tanya sikit tentang sistem di Indonesia itu, sebab saya sedikit tertarik kepada ada ura-ura orang yang mengatakan bahawa mereka nak kembali ke sistem yang berparliamentary, inverted commas, yang ada sebelum 2004 kalau tak silap saya, where they moved to a direct election for the presidency. Do you think that there are some people who also think that there should be seats in the Majlis Permusyawaratan Rakyat for what's the word? Uniform bodies like the ABRI, which if I'm not mistaken, was a feature of the old Indonesian parliament. What do you think?
Again, that's, I think, opinions will differ, but I believe a lot of experts will agree that sort of a distinction between the civilian and the military authority has been a very, very good change, and sort of having that distinction has worked well for us, even though, again, sometimes, the distinctions can get quite blurry if they're retired and so on and so forth. Did that answer your question? I hope.
Yep. I think it did. Very, very interesting. Thank you so much for providing some of the perspectives from Indonesia. We really appreciate it. Been very eye-opening.
When are the Indonesian elections taking place again, or scheduled to be held?
Let me look this up real quick. I do not believe they have a firm date on the actual election day yet, but it is scheduled to be 2024, and that will be sort of, we call it Pilkada or Pemilu Serentak, which is like a general election. We used to have, well, since the system changed in 2014, we used to have different days for the election of the president, for the governor and mayors, and the members of our parliament. Now they're all going to be done all at once. And so there's a lot of candidates. And the last election that I participated in, the ballot was about the size of like an A2 paper. So it was massive. It could cover, it was massive. It was like a big carpet. And then we had to poke the candidates we wanted with a needle, with like a nail, and then put it in our ballot. So that's going to be interesting to see how many different things are at stake at the same time. So
that is pretty interesting. I can't fathom that kind of size of the ballot as well. And over here already, I think we have some of us already confused with our tiny little ballots. But yeah, I'm honestly interested in what's going on, I guess, in the Southeast Asian region. I mean, we're just across the sea, from each other. What's going on the other side and stuff. So yeah, we'll be keeping an eye on the Indonesian elections as well. And we have a question here. Are there any reliable sources for real-time voting results? Short answer for that, I guess. One of the ones we're using right now is from Malaysia Kini. I think all the major news outlets in Malaysia are all also running their own updates for the election. The Star, Awani, even I believe Undi also has correct me if I'm wrong, Cameron, but Undi also has a running page to actually update on their results. But it's a great thing that we're talking about reliable sources as well as all of these statistics, because we will be talking about data visualization as well with one of our guests later. So yeah. And I also have an update regarding the Form 14 for the Pachas. Hannah Yo has said that the forms have been signed. So hopefully there's no more hold up on that end. And yep. let's take a look again at the results that's going on. I think there are more seats already being confirmed. Right, so if we are from 11 up to 17, I think then this is going to be a long night. Speaking of long, the line at my polling station earlier was actually pretty long. I actually had to double back to vote, and I'm not sure if anyone watching also had like a similar experience, but the traffic was really bad my end. So I attempted to go out once in the morning. I actually had to go back because it was so jammed, and then I went out again, and the line at the station was still long. So I hope no one had. I hope everyone else had a better time than I did. But yeah, just how was everyone's voting experience? Feel free to let us know as well in the comments. Was it easy for you? Was it your first time voting? Well, was everything confusing, or perhaps was it just very efficient? And yeah, share your thoughts. Until 1:30.
Oh,
Oh yeah, go on. Yeah.
that's really interesting. The comment from Yipeng, she went at 1:30 after 1:30, and it was really fast. If I could ask Yipeng, maybe she can put in an answer afterwards. What time did SPR Suruhanjaya Pilihan Raya recommend you to go out to the polling station? Because I also wanted to ask Charlene if you went according to the time on that SPR recommended, or did you go just whenever you felt like it, I suppose, for want of a better word.
That's actually a really good point to bring up, because I noticed, yeah, they had that recommended times thing, and I think that also confused a lot of people because we have Melody here saying went in the morning, was pretty fast, but yeah, really good point too. So some people were actually asking me, like, are we supposed to go at that time? Is that our allocated slot and stuff? And I'm not sure why there was this thing right now. My allocated time or suggested time was 10 a.m. My family usually goes quite early because we live pretty close to the polling station. Like literally, I used to go to school there, so we can just walk on foot. So our habit is to, go super early and all of that. But this year, we were actually split into two different polling stations. So for my parents, it was straightforward, took them about 5 minutes. For me and my siblings, it did not. So we tried around, again, the recommended time for me was 10 a.m. That was when the traffic was super bad. And then we tried again later around 12 p.m. and traffic was better, but the line was still pretty long. So yeah, I think Yipeng has replied too that their recommended slot was 2 to 4 p.m. So that's interesting. We also have some other people saying that theirs was at 8 a.m. William here is saying that his recommended time was 8 a.m. Pretty efficient.
I'm
But
so
it was
sorry you had
crowded
to wake up
yeah.
that early. That's all I want to say about that. But I was at a polling station at Paroy, and we reached there at around what time did we reach there? Maybe 8:30, and it was actually pretty quick. I think we waited, or more specifically, my girlfriend waited for around maybe not even 30 minutes, 30 minutes in out, and traffic was pretty lenggang around the area, but towards the afternoon traffic was terrible. But that's a Rumban for you, I suppose.
Yeah, I think honestly for me, I think one of the inspiring things was just seeing everyone go out to vote. So that was great. And Yipeng's asking, did anyone enjoy any of the election promotions happening today? I did. After voting, we went to the pasar just nearby, and it was really nice to see the vendors were just giving out free things, like, oh, show us your finger, and then you can get. So we got free kueh, different kinds, and that was nice. Enjoyed that. Not sure if anyone else in the audience also benefited or enjoyed any of these promotions. Perhaps share some of the deals with us too, because I know some places are running these promotions until tomorrow. So maybe if anyone knows of like a really good deal, let us know in the comments so we can all just go and like show our fingers and grab it. Yeah, like Taco Bell. Right.
Yeah. Good to know that some of the things are also the same, because we also have the thing where we dip our fingers in ink and it would not wash away for like weeks. Usually I would still get like a little blue under my fingernails for like 2 weeks. But yeah, the promotions are usually great.
I think the best one I read was Genting Skyworld is giving out one buy one free one tickets if you have ink on your finger. So we might be doing an impromptu trip to Genting very soon.
Nice, that's interesting. But yeah, go and get all your discounts, deals, everyone. I can see in the comments popcorn at Dadi as well, Taco Bell. But yeah, and just got word from back end that our first guest is here to join us. We have our founder, PJ Thum himself. PJ, there you are. Hi, PJ. Thanks for joining us.
Hello. Hello from Manila. Thank you for letting me interfere in your domestic politics.
No worries. Glad to have you here as well, PJ. And I mean, we say domestic, but I guess we're also, talking about like Indonesian perspectives as well. And I think everyone at this point is just sort of interested to see what's going on. But yeah, I mean, you're here, and I guess we'd also like to ask you about that.
Wait,
What do you think so
before we
far?
get started, I just want to clarify the whole the presiding officers not willing to sign the form. Does that mean that they think that there's some wrongdoing, or the count is wrong, or there were illegal voters, or what? So the significance, you explained what it was, but I don't understand the significance of it. Are they alleging criminality or just errors?
If I were to take a stab, they probably are alleging errors because so the way that they sort the votes is that they will have 5 bins. So the bins are let's assume there are 3 parties running, right? 3 candidates, excuse me. Party A, Party B, Party C, and then rosak and then ragu, or in English, spoiled and dubious. So the people who are actually sorting will be election commission officials, but there will be polling agents and counting agents present to watch it happening. I think both in Singapore and Malaysia, we call them pachas. Or at least we like to call them pachas. It's a nice word, right?
Polling agents and counting agents.
Yeah. So
Yes.
if I were to take a stab at why the KTMs were less than keen to sign, I would assume is that because they think that the pachas interfered too much in the counting. So the pachas are the ones, when they see the ballots, they will say, hang on, no, I think that should be rosa, or hang on, I think that should be ragu first, like that. But I have also, however, heard stories where the actual SPR counting people don't know what is rosa and what is ragu, and they will turn to the pachas or turn to the observers who are non-governmental organizations like Bersih, for instance, and will say, what do I do with this one? I've heard one specific story like that, and the response that was given was, go look in the handbook, it's there on the table. So it's interesting how counting occurs in polling stations. But yes, it's a long story short, to answer your question, they're probably just a bit less than confident in the counts that were actually made during counting.
That's the thing, right? We don't realize how much our elections rely on volunteers. And because elections are such massive logistical operations, but they only happen once every 4 or 5 years, people don't actually have the opportunity to practice. They just get trained, and the quality of what people are able to learn in that training, especially in a short election like this, is very variable. So in Singapore, for example, we've had there was a blogger who went to observe different counting because he volunteered as a counting agent. And then he also had other people who were counting agents elsewhere, and they compared notes. And what qualified as a spoiled ballot or what was accepted as a valid ballot actually differed significantly from counting station to counting station. So, we have our democracy resting on these very, very delicate mechanisms, which can be very easily disrupted purely because people aren't adequately trained, or the training wasn't adequate, or people just make mistakes.
Yeah, that's very interesting actually, because towards the end of campaigning period, I was still hearing a lot of candidates saying that they didn't have enough bachas. They were desperately trying to get bachas to sign up, get them trained in the short amount of time that they had, and as well as the fact that a lot of people who suddenly are arguing about having a fixed term parliament and having fixed election dates for Malaysia. One of the pros that they said that would come out of that is that you would have enough time and notice to train people like bachas and people like SPI agents who are tasked to do these big monumental tasks that unfortunately they may not be too I don't want to use the word competent, that makes me sound snobbish, may not be too able to do with the amount of time that they have.
Yeah, I think that short time frame is definitely something as well. We barely had, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe we had slightly over 30 days this time from announcement of dissolution of parliament all the way to the voting day. And I know a lot of people were actually scrambling to also like educate themselves about, how to vote essentially. What's going to happen and everything. I don't know if this is the shortest amount of time we've ever had for like a campaign period or something, but yeah, the short time frame perhaps is something that also affected all of that. I know a lot of candidates were calling for volunteers. Parties were asking, for like the assistance as well. And not sure if that actually affected anything else. Oh, we have a comment here. Oh no, I hope you're feeling well, Queenie. Tested COVID positive this morning, so got the cut queue today. All right, officers were helpful and the process was quite fast. I'm not sure, but did they allow all the COVID, like anyone who's COVID positive to go and vote at a certain time? Because I was hearing rumors of that, like you were supposed to go in like after 4 or something like that. But I'm not sure how that process was like. But hearing from Queenie here, it sounds like it was quite helpful and the process was quite fast. So yeah, I hope you feel better. Queenie is actually one of our guests later on as well. Would also feature her as we talk about the postal voting later. But yeah, I mean, PJ, while we have you as well, I'm not sure if you, again, going back to that, like have any thoughts so far as you watch us Malaysians scramble to elect our next leader. And oh, that's nice, Cameron. But yeah, I'm not sure, any thoughts or any questions or anything from your end?
Well, it's in some ways very reminiscent of Singapore, of course, although you have more layers of government than we do. But I thought what was interesting to kind of continue from this discussion about the fragility of our democracy is really to think about what exactly should the structure be in order to create a parliament that is representative of the people. And this has been a bit of the theme of the articles that we've put out about how the election system works, and Kok Hin's Monopoly and Monotony article, right? But more broadly, the weakness of various electoral systems, and the fundamental question being, well, how do we create a system that actually is representative of the people? And personally, I think there's two issues, when we think about these electoral systems, but also democracy and representation. And the first is that there is no perfect system, right? Whether it's proportional representation, which I think there are advocates for in Malaysia, or whether it's the sort of Westminster-style system, or a mixture, party list system, or what they have in Israel, for example, right? These are all very different systems, but they all have their own flaws. And I think the broader problem is that we put way too much into our elections as being the sole determinant of how a democracy works. And part of that is because, authoritarian governments have narrowed and steadily narrowed the opportunity for people to participate in democracy all the way down to just elections. So all elections have everything at stake, right? There's no other way to really express your democratic voice. It becomes just elections. You can't legitimately participate in so many other ways, which would be standard in more open democracies. For example, having your freedom of expression respected, being able to organize and to protest, or trade unions, or other forms of organization, political, pressure groups, for example, that you might create around an issue, right? Which are very common and really which are also present in Malaysia, but in Malaysia, in Singapore, elsewhere in Southeast Asia, these organizations are not allowed to really express their voice. So it becomes just electoral systems. It just becomes just the election. And then what happens is, no matter what happens in the election, as we've seen with elections around as our articles have explained, the election it's impossible to satisfy the genuine democratic aspiration of every citizen, right? No matter what happens, you're going to feel like the system doesn't quite represent you at best, or at worst, you hate every single choice. And this, I think, is part of the bigger problem facing the world right now, where we have people who are so angry and frustrated at the fact that no matter who they vote for, that person then has to compromise to be part of the system and has to make choices which are not fully representative of each individual voter who voted for them, or each individual voter in their constituency, right? And that's driving a lot of people to vote for extremist right-wing, left-wing candidates. And I think that, ultimately, so we have to think about what system is the most representative. But we also have to think about how we have loaded elections with all the responsibility for democracy, when actually democracy requires so many different ways for people to have their voice heard, and for politicians to be accountable, and for a dialogue between those who create policy and those who don't, but the rest of the citizens. And all the different protections that people need to live lives of dignity and respect, right? So so those are the two big things that I'm thinking about as I watch this election.
Thanks for that, PJ. Kind of reminds me a lot about there's so much, more than just casting the ballot involved in the democracy. And I was actually reading a quote earlier today, which sort of, talked about voter turnout and everything, and how, basically it essentially can be summed up to this only works, like democracy only works if everyone participates, or as many people participate, not just like one or two. Otherwise, then the whole system just doesn't function or doesn't work. But again, thank you so much for all your insights and your time, and for taking some time out to join us here on the watch party. I'm not sure if you're free the whole night and you would like to also continue watching and stay up with us as we count the votes as well. I can see some updates coming in. We've already seen some seats
definitely
being held and losing. But thank you so much for joining us, PJ, and nice to hear your perspective as well from across the seas too.
Thank you very much. Good luck, Malaysia. I think you're setting a good example for the rest of us in Southeast Asia, so keep it up. The Malaysian people are doing very well, I think.
Thank you, and that's really nice to hear that we're setting a good example rather than what we usually do. But yes,
no. I mean, it's not your. I'm not talking about your politicians, right? Necessarily, I'm talking about the Malaysian people. The fact that you've come out in such high numbers to vote, the fact that you fought for and won the right to vote for those under 21, right? These are fantastic things, and I think that you're setting a really good example. So congratulations to the people of Malaysia.
We're living up to the phrase Malaysia boleh, I think.
Yeah, Malaysia boleh, yeah. All right, thank you, PJ. That I honestly I think Malaysia boleh has it has been playing a lot in my mind also today. I remember a time where, to me, that phrase was used kind of ironically, like, oh, Malaysia boleh, like you were saying just now, Cameron, like inverted commas. But yeah, the past couple of years has really, perhaps changed that rhetoric a little for me. Let's take a look very quickly, I guess, to the results. How are we looking? How's things looking? Yeah. I saw a couple of highlights as you were speaking just now. Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, these are
That's
very
new.
interesting results. I think I saw some of the results over in Sarawak. I think I saw uh, Abdul Taib Mahmud's daughter has retained the seat for Muka, if I'm not
Landslide,
mistaken.
right? Yeah.
Seems like Abdul Taib Mahmud is still a very popular figure in Sarawak, despite being chief minister for a very long time and now the governor of Sarawak. Can we maybe see the seats that are official? Is this on the page? I haven't looked at the seat yet.
Yeah, I believe those are official. The unofficial ones, I'm following a couple of social media feeds as well, and there are unofficial results coming in. But I believe whatever's updated here should already be official. So yeah, is there any specific state you wanted to check out, Cameron, or?
Not in my mind, but I would say that in the hot seat page, Alif is like just having an aneurysm trying to jump back and forth. Thanks, Alif. There are a few seats that aren't mentioned in this hot seat page, which I would believe to be hot seats. One of them being the seat for Batu in Kuala Lumpur, where we are seeing the new party man P. Prabhakaran with the endorsement of Pakatan Harapan going against the ex-incumbent for the 13th Parliament, if I'm not mistaken, Chan Tian Chua. Is that no? Chua Tian Chan, I think. Tian Chua lah. Why am I using his full name?
Yeah.
Yeah. Why did I have you feel the need to use his full name? Yeah, so they are going up against each other in a 10-corner fight, and that is for maybe those not in the know, that is the most candidates running in one election ever recorded in Malaysian history. That's 10 candidates, 4 from main parties, and if I'm not mistaken, actually no lah. 4 from the main coalition. If I'm not mistaken, there might be 1 or 2 from the smaller parties, and too many independents for me to name all of. I can recall Siti Kasim, lawyer and human rights activist, who I've met before. She's a lovely person. And also Cleopatra, or I think her actual name is Nur Fatin Shazwani. She's a social media influencer who posted a video where she said that all the trees that you see in Batu are my endorsement. I don't need to put up any posters. She proceeded to put up posters of her face around Batu. Don't worry. Also, the joke is that her election symbol on the ballot paper was a symbol of a tree. Sorry, I should have explained that.
Yeah, when I saw the candidate list come out, and of course Daniel, and also anyone watching in the audience, if you have questions about all of these, just feel free to pop it in and we'll address them. But yeah, when I saw the 10-corner fight, I was like, wow, that's going to be really hotly contested. I just checked. I believe the Batu official results aren't in yet, but unofficially, it looks like Perikatan is in the lead with Azhar Yahya for Batu. So yeah, they'll probably be counting the votes as we go along, and let's see how that goes. On that note, we are already midway through our watch party. Everyone who's watching so far, or anyone who's tuned in right now, welcome. And we also would like to welcome our next guest. Can we, I'm not sure if he's ready, but if Yan, you're ready, would like to have you on. Oh, there you are. Yeah. Hey, hi Yan, how you doing?
Hi Charlene, I'm good. Hi everyone, really excited to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, we're excited to have you here as well, and also to talk about like data visualization and some of your work that you've done. But how are you? Would you also like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, so hi everyone. So my name is Yan Naok. You can call me Yan, and I run a data consultancy called TV, and I'm originally from Myanmar. And so I've been working a lot on open data issues and civic tech issues for a long time, and we had been working on election data in my country, in Myanmar, for our 2015 and 2020 elections. So we gathered all the data, made the data available about candidates and parties and results and things like that. But unfortunately, in 2021, in Myanmar, we had a coup. And so we don't have elections anymore for the time being, at least. So what we're trying to do now with our team and some of our friends in Malaysia who are also in this field of civic tech and open data is to make sure that everyone can openly get access to results from the elections. And especially what we saw when we talked to newsrooms in Malaysia was that you guys were looking at the Malaysia Kini dashboard, and I think there are like 3 or 4 other news sites that have really nice live updating graphics. But for a lot of newsrooms, these kinds of things are really hard to build, right? You need the technical skills for web developers, designers, and data scientists as well. And so what we thought we could do to contribute with the skills and experience that we've learned is to build open source data visualizations for smaller newsrooms or civil society groups or anyone to be able to access and use. So that's the project that we've been working on for the past couple of months.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think we can actually pull up the Malaysian election data vis tool that all of you were working on as well. But yeah, just there we go. That's the visualization tool. I wanted to say that when you first linked this to me, and I actually was really impressed at how and I mean, I suppose all of you should be experts on this, on how I was impressed on how the data was visualized, essentially. As you can see, if you move around and it already displays all the information, at your fingertips about, and I believe this is updated live as well.
So we purposely didn't want to update it live because so we're not experts on Malaysian elections. We do data, but not we're kind of we're tech geeks more than election geeks. So we're going to be waiting for the main SPR dashboard to update. And as soon as the SPR dashboard updates, I'm looking at it on my other monitor right now. I think there are like 7 seats officially updated. So we'll be pulling the data from there. And every hour or so tonight, we'll try to update our site.
It's nice though to see it finally populated with the colors. Because I remember I was checking this yesterday and it was like all gray, and then now you can actually see the seats like change. Do you want to talk a little bit about the effort that goes into this as well? Because I honestly feel like we also had a question earlier about reliable sources for the voting results as well, and that's honestly on the forefront of my interest too. How do we portray this information, a lot of very complex or complicated information, in a way that's accessible, especially here in Malaysia. We have people from different cultures who speak different languages. We get our information from different sources. But this, like a visualization tool like this, that transcends all of that. It already gives us the information we need across all those barriers. So yeah, maybe you'd like to talk a little bit about the effort that goes into it. How did all of you put this together, and what are your thoughts about information accessibility? How important is this to democracy? I guess.
Yeah. So coming in, we didn't know exactly where to find the best data. And we ended up using data from a bunch of different sources. So we also wanted to make sure that not just the recent, the latest year, but also all the data going back to all the way to 2004 was available. And especially for the historical data, it was quite hard to get all this data. And so we had a combination of data that was scraped from Malaysia Kini's dashboard, the STARS dashboard, the SPR site, and also for some information about parties and which coalitions they belong to, even Wikipedia. And then we had to verify it in another way. Because I think one of the things that we weren't careful about in the beginning when we started this project was the fact that in Malaysia, the parties and the coalitions changed around quite a bit. So what we got from the Election Commission dashboard was mostly about which coalition a candidate belongs to, and not so much the party. So we had to do a bit of triangulation to make sure that we got both the party information and the coalition information. And so thankfully, most of the data was available in an electronic format, so we didn't have to kind of request, actual, PDF files and scrape them ourselves. But we had to scrape the data from all these different sources using different types of techniques. And yeah, especially going back to the previous years, it was quite a bit harder. One thing that was particularly hard was getting the geospatial data for the constituencies. I'm sure you guys know the CINA project and Karel, who heads it, and he had been very helpful in kind of identifying sources for us about the districts and the district boundaries and how that has been changing throughout the years as well. So it was not the hardest that we've had to do compared to like in Myanmar, but it was still quite a bit of work. And and looking at how much work we had to do just to get the data before we put it on some sort of a visual format, I think a lot of newsrooms without big technical teams would find it quite difficult to be able to do this.
That's very interesting, actually. If I may ask, you were talking just a little while ago about how you were going to visualize coalitions, because that's actually something I ran into as a problem with a different project that I worked on. If I'm not mistaken, SPR just puts out information based on the party symbols that they are contesting under. How did you work around that? What was your solution that you found the best?
Yeah, so we had to triangulate a few different things. So we found that for a couple of weeks ago, the STARS website had both the party and the coalition for GE15. And then Malaysia Kini's latest map dashboard update had both the party and the coalition data for the incumbents that are currently in parliament and the contestants for GE15. And for the older years, we found Malaysia Kini's website undi.info, I think had that information as well. So it was not the most straightforward. I think there are also situations where I think there were data entry errors. So even though some entries were supposed to be for the party, like they would have the coalition information there. So we had to double check. And the thing that I found really fascinating was actually the Wikipedia pages that has all the detailed results data was actually the most detailed. So we didn't use Wikipedia data as our main source, of course, because that would be quite hard. But it was really good to cross-check, right? And of course, all the Wikipedia pages had references as well. But unfortunately, and this happens in other countries as well, the website that they reference, usually a government website, would no longer be up. So it really makes it really hard to be able to backtrack and say, okay, we know this data is there for real. And to make sure that all this is transparent, all the scripts that we use to scrape and clean the data, as well as the data types themselves, are also available online. So I can drop those links. So here is the site itself.
Nice. I think that's really interesting, actually, that you talk about that, because I think we shouldn't even talk about news websites. I think some of the parties themselves are a bit confused about what coalitions they're in. If I'm not mistaken, the seat for Baluran in Sabah, they have a Perikatan Nasional candidate, but then suddenly there was a someone last minute rocked up to the nomination center, and there was none other than Ronald Kiandi, who decided to contest under the Bersatu banner. And so then it begs the question, do you put Bersatu as part of Perikatan Nasional, but then they are fighting against each other in this seat? Yeah, so I think you did a really great job. If I can ask one more question, actually, how do you visualize? Oh, sorry. How do you visualize all the different candidates that are running? Because like a lot of candidates nowadays, a lot of people voting nowadays are quite confused about who is running in their seats, who's with what. Especially when you talk about seats like Batu, for example, that have 10 candidates. How do you visualize that sort of data?
Yeah, so on the tool that's on the screen right now, right? So if you on the year drop down, if you change it to either 2022 or maybe 2018, and you click on the if you mouse over on any of the, so we will show either in two formats, either a listing of the candidates with the coalition and party, or if you switch the show results S from tooltip to bar chart on the side there, then that's the alternate way of. Yeah, we're still trying to have an alternate way where one of the things, of course, with any kind of election map that's strictly geographical is that it doesn't represent the actual number of voters, right? So you have, constituencies where the land area is very big. So on the map, it looks like a big block of color, but it might not have a lot of voters there, right? So one thing that we want to be producing in hopefully a day or two is an alternate kind of map that doesn't show the strict geography, but shows each constituency as an equally sized circle. So, for example, all the constituencies in the big urban areas, you can also see them and see who were the winners in that location. So nice. I think for example I think when Donald Trump won, he carried around this map saying, everything is red, and why did I have such a low margin, blah blah blah. And I think people, the digital visualization people, kind of started making these kind of alternate styles of maps where it's not land doesn't vote, people vote was the thing that they were saying, which is true, right? And I think with visualization, you can show alternate ways of course, the geographic map is something that people instantly recognize, but of course, it can also be misleading.
Nice. I was well, when you were telling us to mouse over a constituency, I was actually going to ask for a specific one to see if Alif knew where it was. So shall I do that now? Okay, mouse over.
Geography test for our Alif, our team member at the back end, I guess. Go ahead, Cameron.
All right, cool. Would you be able to mouse over the seat for Bukit Bendera, Alif? That's in Penang. That's a hint for you. Okay, he's looking for it now.
Facing you.
Yeah, so one of the additional things that we want to add, hopefully in a day or two, is also a search box where you can do that quite easily. Instead of so I know exactly the constituency that you're talking about, but it's in the northern tip of Penang.
Correct. Yeah,
northwest. Yes.
It's the second island from the top left. If you want to try that, Alif. No, lower. Yeah, there you go. It's somewhere left a bit. Okay, it's around there.
There you go.
So actually,
live user testing. This is great. Yeah, no, I mean this is great because when people actually start using it, then all these things come up about usability, and we don't want users to be able to know the geography, to be able to find things, and what Charlene was saying earlier about accessibility, right? So one thing that we're going to have is also multilingual functionality. That's something that if you right now we haven't pushed it yet, but I think by in a day or two we should have both Bahasa and English up. And in addition to that, one thing that we I think it was a failure on our part was to visualization are very visual, of course. So if you're for people who are vision impaired, it's really hard to get information out of this kind of thing. So one thing that we're trying to do is also make it so that someone who has a screen reader can at least get a summary of what the map is showing. So, for example, at least when all the results are in just the tally of the seats or something like that. I think that design challenge is also quite hard. I don't think it's fully solved yet in the design sense, but we, especially for visualizations that are going to be should be accessible for the entire population, is something that we really want to focus.
Yeah, that's a really good point to bring up as well. Like the captions, maybe some kind of like screen reader and stuff. And I like that all of you are thinking about that. It's always just so fascinating to hear you talk about all these data visualization work. All of you are putting in great effort, Yan, and yeah, keep going. I'm really interested to see what else all of you continue to put out. And also just wanted to thank you so much for taking the time to hop on today. For anyone who's interested in using this tool, I believe we've dropped the link in the chat as well. Feel free to check it out yourself and click around and everything. And yeah, Yan, before we let you go, we have a question here from PJ. Do the constituency borders account for gerrymandering over time, and is that possible?
I think there was a really good article that someone from a think tank in Malaysia wrote. I think it was from Penang Institute or something, where they really dug into the demographics and the boundary redrawing, I think, between 2014 and 2018. So I think, of course, we can say that the boundaries change, and we can say that the demographics within those boundaries change. So is there gerrymandering or not? I think that would be a subjective question for the political analysts to really dig into. But yeah, I mean, we're not the experts for that kind of topic, but there have been really good articles written about that. So yeah, I think.
Yeah, and I think perhaps this also ties into what you were saying just now. I think about Trump with the map, and then land doesn't vote and this sort of thing. And yeah, I guess that goes back into the question about how we present the data. Where like again, if you see on the map, even for Malaysia, and how people are going to interpret the information when you see the blue, the red, and understanding that. But I think it'd be an interesting point to consider for future like data visualization as well, whether or not this accounts for the gerrymandering. And again, going back to how people interpret the data, like when they see like a big piece and it's like all red, what kind of message do they get and stuff. So yeah. Thank you, PJ, for the question, and also thank you so much, Yan, for taking that. And we look forward to seeing more of all of your work, and keep it up. And thank you so much for your time to join us as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Yan. Right. And speaking of the elections, yeah, once again, if everyone would like to check out the tool, it's in the chat box. Let's really quickly go back to the results and see how is everyone doing.
Yeah,
I'm hearing my WhatsApp groups are pinging and people are like, there are surprises here and there. Cameron, anything that looks surprising to you also from your end? And I'm not sure if Daniel is hearing from your Malaysian friends.
Yeah, not surprising per se. I did see just before Yan joined us just now on the live blog at the bottom, which was unofficial, but now I can confirm is official, that Hasni Muhammad has won the seat of Simpang Regam against the incumbent Mazli Malik. I wouldn't say that that's surprising, although the reason I say that is because during the Sarawak, there you go. No, this is official if I'm not mistaken, because the pinging that I was hearing in my ear was apparently dashboard SPR. Apparently it pings when news comes in. But so this for the seat of Simpang Renggam, that's actually very interesting because Mazli Malik won in the 2018 general election, and in 2021, I honestly always think that election is way farther away than it was because I was in Johor for that election. The 2021 Johor state election, the two state legislative assembly seats within Simpang Renggam, Layang-Layang, and another seat, both went back to Barisan Nasional. including Layang-Layang, which was being contested by Dr. Mazli himself. So it's not surprising. It will be interesting to see other seats which have the same how do I put this? Which have the same feature, I suppose. Mua being one of them, because both of the state legislative assembly seats under Mua also went back to BN. So that will be very interesting to see whether or not the Muda candidate president Said Sadiq can retain that seat. Okay, that's interesting. I also see that Chong Jen Jen of DAP Sarawak has retained the seat of Stampin, which I feel is very interesting, because there have been great shifts within in Sarawak, specifically from the Chinese community, who are traditionally the biggest supporters of DAP, moving away from DAP. Towards other parties, going back to GPS, going to some of the more fringe parties, including secessionist parties such as Parti Bumi Kenyalang. I wrote a few hot seats down, which weren't in Malaysia Kini's hot seat thingy just now. So there was Simpang Renggam, which we know the results to, Batu, Muar, Ipoh Timur, and Sungai Buloh. Now, if I'm not mistaken, Charlene, there was news that Khairi Jamaluddin, ex-Minister of Health, is leading in Sungai Buloh. Is that true?
Yes, unofficial unofficial results. I believe it's not declared officially yet, but multiple sources. I'm looking at business BFM News. They are also reporting that yes, he is indeed leading in Sungai Buloh, closely followed behind by the PH candidate Ramanan Ramakrishnan. But yes, Khairi is leading.
Ramanan Ramakrishnan being a very interesting candidate, because so for those who are not in the know, Pakatan Harapan candidates are mandated to return an asset declaration. Also tick the bingo, asset declaration. There we go. Mandated to return an asset declaration. And it's very interesting, if anybody cited Ramanan Ramakrishnan's asset declaration, it's basically everything's just crossed out with just one number at the end stating his total asset value, which is quite dubious, I would say. Amongst other things that he's been accused of, swindling money from someone and then being hauled to court for it. Please don't quote me on that, Ramanan Ramakrishnan. If you become YB, please don't sue me for defamation. Shall I go for this question that PJ's put in the chat, Shirley?
Sure, go ahead. I've been following the Gombak seat as well, actually, but yeah, go ahead.
So
Cameron.
PJ asks, I saw Azmin Ali is losing at Gombak, exclamation point. Would his loss be expected, question mark, or a surprise, question mark? Now, this is actually interesting because I used to live there. I grew up around that. I grew up actually in Bukit Antrabangsa, which is his state legislative assembly seat, and I went to school in Taman Melawati, which is in Gombak as a parliamentary constituency. His loss in Gombak, I would say, would not be very much of a surprise, because to my mind, the people in that neck of the woods really do vote for party and not for personality, regardless of the fact that people see him as a very successful chief minister for Selangor. He left the chief ministership when Pakatan Harapan won the general election in 2018 to take on the mantle of Minister for Trade and for International Trade and Industry, excuse me. But in general, I would say that it's not too surprising. What I did find surprising is the fact that his brother did not run against him and, waste another 10,000 ringgit as a donation to Suruhanjaya Pilihan Raya. If people don't know, Azmin Ali's brother is Azwan Ali. He is a, how do I describe him, Charlene, to people who don't know who Azwan Ali is?
Yeah, I'm not too sure if we should be making like personal comments on that, but yeah, I think get what you're trying to say on that. The last I checked, which wow, actually I realized it's more than an hour ago, was that Azmin Ali was leading, but yes, now it appears that Harapan is actually leading, and the gap has actually already widened to a few thousand votes. So yeah. We shall see what happens in Gombak. But yeah, thank you for that question as well, PJ. And very quickly before, I think our next guest has arrived, but before we move on to that, let's very quickly do a bit of a summary about how everything's going on so far. Let's also check on our little bingo, because I think we kind of forgot about that. And thank you for bringing that up. Cameron. So yes, very quickly so far, again, we've been chatting about the results tonight. Also playing a little bingo, again, to our viewers, if we've seen anything. What did you ask us to check off again, Cameron?
Asset declaration. Actually,
Asset
no,
declaration,
but
there we
it says
go.
asset declaration request, and I just said asset declaration.
Gosh, so close.
Well,
Let's try and get that line. The third demand for recount. Oh, that's difficult.
yes.
Undi 18, Kita Jaga Kita Trends on Twitter. But once again, to our audience watching on all the channels, if all of you see any of these things, if you hear us mention it, hear anyone mention it as well, perhaps on social media or something, let us know if you've heard any of that. But yeah, so we've been chatting again about the results. Also talking of a little bit about things such as gerrymandering, visualization of the data, interesting surprises throughout the night, and certain anecdotes about what's been going on in the polling station. Once again, if everyone wants to share your stories, how did polling day go for you? How was the lines? Was it efficient? What are your thoughts? Your expectations? Any inspiring, wholesome stories or any challenges that you faced? Yeah, share it with us in the comments and we'll highlight them as we go along with the watch party. Right, so let's bring on our next guest because I think she's here and we can talk about the next topic too, now that Queenie is also with us, about postal voting. Hi, Queenie. Hi, I hope you're feeling well. I heard you mentioned earlier that you tested positive for COVID, and I really hope you're feeling well. Thank you so much, despite all of that, for coming onto our call today. How's it going? We can't really hear you, and I think, yeah, the audio is a little... Okay, maybe a little bit of technical difficulties over there.
I suppose
It's raining my end. I'm not sure if it's raining for anyone else too. But yeah, perhaps that's sort of affecting it. While we wait for Queenie to get the internet back, I guess we're also moving on to that subject of postal voting. And yeah, Cameron, you've been volunteering with the postal voting. I'm aware.
Why would you dox me like this, Charlene?
I know, right? Like, revealing personal information. Like,
you.
yeah, but I mean, how was that? Like, I mean, how's
Ayo,
that been going?
you put this. Hang on. Actually, oh no, then this is gonna cause dead air. So I'll do this later. There's a whole bit I wanted to do where it's like I didn't volunteer with postal voting, but I can get my friend who's just outside the door, and then I'd leave and put on a different shirt and pretend I was someone else. But I think that would cause too much dead air. But yes, I suppose I would to dox myself even more. I was part of the Vote Malaysia collective, which ferried home nearly I think around 35,000 postal votes from all over the world from the Malaysians living overseas, and we successfully brought them back to KLIA, sorted them at the Kuala Lumpur and Selangor Chinese Assembly Hall in KL, and then distributed them to all 222 constituencies plus state legislative assembly constituencies as well. It was a very manic experience. Yesterday I didn't sleep for 18 hours, I think. Yeah, so there's a story there. But yes, it was a great experience seeing so many dedicated Malaysians come back with suitcases full of envelopes filled with postal ballots. It really does exemplify and get ready the bingo here. Our kita jaga kita spirit, because Malaysians really do. I think we really look out for each other the most. Yeah, boy.
It has to trend on
God
Twitter
damn
for us
it.
to cross that out, though.
Dang.
So
Yeah, thank you. That's how I feel right now. It's sad. I got first demand for the dress code. I'll get it. I'll get it. But yes,
we'll get there,
yeah, it
yeah.
really did exemplify in my mind the spirit of Malaysians helping each other out in a time of crisis. Not crisis per se, but in difficult times, especially knowing that the postal vote system in Malaysia is so inefficient and so easily replaced, but there just doesn't seem the political will to do it. But yes, I have one of those T-shirts. I was going to put it on. I also carried the flag, which was very cumbersome. We weren't actually allowed to put it up because I think we didn't want to. We didn't want MAHP to get mad at us, basically. Because like if we put it up somewhere so people could see where we were collecting it, MAHP would be like, "What the hell is this?" That sort of thing.
I mean, kudos to all of you. Yeah. But yeah, I was actually about to ask Daniel a question, but I think Daniel, you have something.
Oh no,
for
just
Cameron?
briefly for Cameron, like what made you sort of like interested to volunteer and to do this in the first place? What sort of compelled you to do it?
Okay, well, it's not there's no inspiring story, unfortunately. It's not like I was called. I saw it was raining, and then suddenly the clouds parted and I could see the sun, and in front of me was the Vote Malaysia flag. Unfortunately, there's no story like that. Tarma is a I know Tarma, the guy in the right of this picture, and I also know the main coordinator, Difansina. He's a good friend of mine, and I was basically roped in to help out. From the planning process to some of the logistics, and finally to sitting at KLIA for nearly 18 hours, waiting for people to come and haul their votes back. We might have Queenie back. Hi, Queenie.
Yeah, I think so. Hey, Queenie, are you back with us?
Hi. Sorry for that.
No worries. Glad to have you with us.
Hi. Can you hear me?
How's everything? How you feeling?
I'm feeling better than this morning. Yeah. Well, I'm feeling good, but my internet is not, so I hope this goes well.
No worries, no worries. Thank you so much again for
Thanks for having me here. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not sure if it's echoing on your end. Might maybe reduce the volume a little.
Okay.
Right, but yeah, I mean, glad to have you here as well, because I just wanted to I guess rope you into, because you know, we're talking about postal voting, and Cameron's also talking about all these challenges and stuff, and I believe you of many just like many of us Malaysians who studied abroad. I mean, I've studied abroad too. You've studied and lived abroad as well. Have your own experiences about postal voting, and do you mind if I talk a little bit about that post you made?
Yeah, sure.
As well.
Sure, go ahead.
So Queenie here actually made a post on Instagram. I believe it was 3 days ago, if I'm not mistaken, more or less, which chronicles her experience about postal voting in the previous election, and all the efforts taken to gather all the votes across multiple European countries, and how it was brought back all the way to KL and to other states. And I believe Queenie's post went viral.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of Malaysians probably shared the sentiment. Yeah, how did that feel? We're showing Queenie's viral post right now here about how Malaysians rallied together to deliver postal votes. But from your perspective, Queenie, how was that? Like going through all of that?
It was quite amazing. I remember receiving the ballot just 3 days before GE, and there was no way I could deliver it on time by post. So I was panicking a little bit, but then I found out about this WhatsApp group with a lot of Malaysians in the Netherlands. So I was added into this group, and people are very, very helpful. Like everyone in the group is trying to coordinate how to bring things back, and someone suggested that we all chip in a little bit so that we could send a runner to fly back to Malaysia with our votes. So that's what we did. And the runner is actually, he lives in Germany. So what he did was he took the train from Germany and then to Belgium and then to Netherlands, collecting votes from Malaysians along the way. And then everyone met at Schiphol Airport in Amsterdam to pass our votes to him. And then he flew back to Malaysia, offloaded one part of it in KLIA and another part of it in Penang, where he had to vote. And it's not just that, because that's just his route, right? But for all of our votes to reach Schiphol, that's also a lot of coordination there. For example, my friend had to come to me to give me his vote, and then I had to cycle to another person's building to pass my vote to that person so that that person could bring it to Schiphol Airport, and so on and so forth. And also when the votes arrive Malaysia, like how do the votes go to other places from KRA? How do they go to other places from Penang? That's also another questions of logistics. So every hour there are just hundreds of messages being shot into that WhatsApp group, and it's quite overwhelming, but it's also quite amazing to see how people can just work together to when they put their minds in doing something, achieving something together, how it can really happen that way, you know. So yeah, that was quite a humbling and eye-opening experience for me as well.
From your perspective as well, right? And maybe also for some of our viewers who's also unfamiliar with the situation and stuff. Why did we, living abroad, why did we have to do it? Also for Cameron, who was volunteering to bring the ballots back.
Yeah.
Why was this a challenge? Couldn't we have just relied on the system that was set up? Or what specifically was so challenging for all of you who lived in, let's say, the Netherlands and all these countries? And why did everyone have to end up rallying together, relying on, the power of the people essentially to bring the ballots back?
Yeah. I think what you said is essentially it, like the lack of a kind of larger support system, official system where we can trust with our votes, and also where we can just cast our votes. Because what I was explaining just now was actually what happened during the last election. But this time around, I'm actually in KL, so I didn't have to go through all that this time around. But since this post kind of became viral, a lot of people actually sent me messages and left comments on my post asking to be added into that group. And I remember one of the comments saying that he is in Belgium and he tried to call the embassy. But the embassy told him that there are NGOs out there doing this, and you can go look for them, So that made me feel like, oh, so they are aware that there's a lack in their support, but then they're willingly, feeling entitled and just willingly passing their jobs to NGOs and people out there. So that's quite disappointing, and I really hope that it gets it improves, because this is something that we have been facing every general election, and it's quite disappointing for me that during the last general election, a lot of people have already been talking about this, but then this time around, we are still going through this, and it has been 4 years. So yeah, hope to see some improvements in that.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually really interesting to hear that story about how, say, oh yeah, just go and look for an NGO to do it. I don't know how that makes you feel, Cameron, and all of the volunteers who have been trying to bring all these ballots back.
I think, yeah, it's interesting that the one of the consuls said that, because if I may share this story, I will not dox anybody, I think. Also, this is not Cameron, this is a different guy. As you can see, I'm wearing a different t-shirt. Actually, one of the one of the ballots that I received personally came from someone who worked at a consulate overseas in Europe, and they passed me all of her ballots except for 2, which were from her boss, the consul. Hang on, I'm trying to think if I yes, and there was some trepidation in giving them to me, because as a civil servant working under the foreign ministry, they didn't want to be associated with an NGO working to do these sorts of things, which I found very interesting. There is a lot of especially in higher circles in the government, some mistrust in giving their jobs to NGOs, even though if they didn't, your votes wouldn't get here. It's as simple as that, right? Did you want to say something, Queenie?
Sorry.
Oh, I thought you wanted to add something. I think if I can give a little bit more context on what Charlene was asking about, why is there a need to do this sort of thing. Just for context, a report that was published by one of the student groups after the Johor state election, which was the first one of the first postal voting initiatives I was involved in, actually told us that the postal voting system can work provided that campaigning periods are longer. So on average, if a postal ballot is sent the business day after nomination day, which is when all ballots are printed, it can safely be received and be sent back in 21 days. That's 3 weeks. And in GE14, that the campaigning period was 11 days, and in GE15, the campaigning period was 14 days. And so there seems to be a certain amount of they've forgotten about the Malaysians overseas. In essence, I would say, you can also see this by the fact that postal voters still have to register to be a postal voter. Of course, there are some exceptions. If I'm not mistaken, if you are a student studying permanently overseas, then you are categorized as a pengundi tidak hadir, and then you are automatically registered. As opposed to if you were a just living abroad or working abroad, then you would be categorized as, you would have to register under category 1B, which is rakyat Malaysia bermas tahun di luar negara, or Malaysians living overseas, is in essence. Which confused a lot of people, because with automatic voter registration, people thought that, oh, I must also be automatically registered as a postal voter, blah, 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 blah. And we had to do a lot of advocacy in that regard, which I think was one of Vote Malaysia's fortes. Just to share with Charlene, Queenie, Daniel, and also the audience, the amount of collected postal votes in GE14 was around 4,000. Correct me if I'm wrong, Queenie. In GE15, that number nearly increased by nearly 10 times. So we collected, I just checked it, 35,000, just above 35,000. So, and I would chalk that up to advocacy, telling people, that you have to register when the registration date closes, which form you need to fill. Some people are filling Borang 1A and submitting that back, while Borang 1A is actually for, you can only post Borang 1A. You're not allowed to submit Borang 1A online. And also just telling people, just coordinating things. I think with GE14, the efforts to coordinate postal votes was, I describe it as point to point. Hi, I am in Kansai. Are you flying back to KL? Let me give you your votes, like that, without considering that maybe there are Malaysians in Saitama or in Chiba who may also have their votes, and the flight from Kansai may be connecting through Haneda or Narita, for example, so if all of them could be connected, that would have made things much more efficient. For Vote Malaysia, what we did was we partnered with student organizations around the world, including JMSA, the Japan Malaysian Students Alliance. We partnered with UKEC, with MSGA, with student organizations in Bahrain, in Egypt, even in France, Germany, and the US. And we got them to put out the message saying, hi, we are here, we will be collecting, we have flights, please give us our postal ballots. And that really streamlined the process and made it possible for Vote Malaysia and also Global Bersih, who also had a similar initiative, to collect as many votes as we could this general election.
Yeah, I think overall, like honestly speaking, right, I think it's just really inspiring how people like Queenie shared with the last election what they did, and even until now, like you're still connecting, overseas Malaysians for this election through your post as well. People like Cameron and so many other volunteers who are helping to bring back the ballots. To me, it's just really inspiring that the people are adamant, I would say, on exercising their right to vote, despite all of these challenges. And to also maybe touch a little bit on what PJ has sort of asked, I guess, is can Malaysians only vote by post? To my knowledge, yes, we only have postal voting available. We are not able to go to embassies or consulates to vote. So what we're seeing again, I think, is that there's a lot of distrust, I guess, in the system. Again, I think we brought this up in the discussion too about the short campaign time. I'm hearing people who are actually receiving their ballots, their postal votes today. So clearly they're not going to have enough time to post it back, unless you can magically teleport your paper back here. But yeah, so with that, a lack of faith in the system, what we're also seeing, I guess, is Malaysians just taking the matter into their own hands, flying back, like forfeiting, like I'm not going to register as a postal voter. I'm just going to fly back myself and vote. But again, of course, that's a whole other topic in terms of like, are you able to fly back? Not everyone also has the luxury or even the time, I guess. If I were still abroad, I think I would have been unable to take leave to go back. We also just got a comment here, which is also a great point as well about the lowering of the voting age, mentioning that this also opens up voting for all overseas students who could never vote before, which might have also bumped the postal votes significantly. That's a great point too. This again, once again, is the election where we're seeing a lot of new voters, first timers as well. It is the first time that Malaysians from the age of 18 are allowed to vote. And the first time that everyone has been auto-registered. So we're seeing a lot of new trends, I guess, in that.
Would you say that it's an Undi 18 trend?
You're looking at the bingo, aren't you, Cameron?
No, I just
Cameron is trying so hard right now.
I'm trying to get bingo. Let's go. But actually, that point about the effect of the lowering of the voting age is actually it is actually quite interesting, and I think that did pave the way for the student organizations to play a big part in the postal vote initiative this time round. My colleagues from UKEC and MSGA, John Lee and Akif, who I met at KLIA on Friday, bringing back, I think, nearly 7,000. I think that's the number, 7,000 votes from the UK, from all over the UK. They were coming back to vote for the first time. Akif was going up the vote in Padang Besar, no, actually Arau, and John was voting in Pandan in KL. And they were carrying into probably all of the votes that, all votes which probably were first-time votes as well, from all the students who flocked to the colder Kuala Lumpur, as some people call it, which is London.
Yeah, and I also on that, right, just want to ask Queenie as well, like perhaps the last question, and of course Cameron or Daniel, if you all have questions, or Queenie too. But yeah, would like to maybe ask, I know that you're already back here in KL, but just your thoughts perhaps on what do you think could be improved, I guess, with this whole postal voting system, especially, you and so many other Malaysians having gone through all these challenges yourself personally. Like if there was one thing, like a very first thing that we should really be like, yeah, let's do this. Like, how we were all like lower the age to 18, sort of thing. What is that one thing you think could really make it more efficient? Like, would it be maybe open up voting in the consulates or embassies, or would it be some kind of like, what are your thoughts on that? What would that first thing be to make it easier for overseas Malaysians to cast their ballots? Yeah?
I think it would be for us to receive the ballots way earlier, so that there will be sufficient time to plan how we are going to cast it. Yeah, I think that's the number one thing that has to be done, because like as you said, I have friends who are receiving their votes today. So I think we need a more efficient system in sending the ballots to Malaysians abroad. Yeah.
And actually, on that note, a bit of a follow-up, I guess, because I'm not sure if you clarified this earlier too, but how was the education like as well? Like you talk about maybe having more time to receive the ballots, but were there really clear instructions on how to actually do the postal voting, or was it again the power of the people trying to teach each other, like this is how you do that, you know, that sort of thing? Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure how it was this time around, but from what I've experienced, I felt that it was really the power of the people. Seeing like all kinds of instructions from social media of these NGOs, and also word of mouth from friends, from random strangers on the internet. Yeah, and I felt like there wasn't much. It seems from what I've observed, my friends who are still abroad, how they are going through it this time around, it feels like there wasn't so much of an improvement on the end of our official bodies, but there's a lot of improvement on the rakyat side. So people are so much more well prepared this time around. At first, when when the news about general election just came out, immediately in that WhatsApp group, people are already starting to like set up Google Sheets and everything to mark like, okay, who where we are at, and whether we have a saksi or not, a witness, and do you need transport to transport this to Schiphol, and so on and so forth. So it has already started then, and then at that moment I thought, this is a lot of pessimism, because like the need to set this up means that we will not get the the ballots in time, right? But then like it turns out that we needed that, because we really didn't receive the ballots in time. So yeah, I was quite impressed on how we learned. The people learn it the hard way, but we learned and came out much more organized and efficient this time around, in both in coordinating but also in spreading the word. Yeah.
I wanted
Malaysia boleh, I guess.
I really hope that so like this time around, a lot of people have been messaging me and asking me to add them into this group, or there are even people from not from the Netherlands, but for example Poland, Belgium, or Norway, asking if I know of any other similar groups in those countries. And on one hand, I felt happy to be able to help them, but on the other hand, I also felt frustrated, because why is this my job? I'm just a random stranger on the internet who wrote a few words, like, why are you trusting me? Like, I'm nobody. So yeah, I hope that this could be improved so that Malaysians they don't have to rely on a random stranger on the internet.
Yeah, that's actually very interesting, because like something that we got a lot of questions about at Vote Malaysia was, are you empowered by the EC to do this? Are you going to tamper with the votes? They're all really important questions to answer, because who are we? I mean, like, we have student organizations behind our backs, but accusations are about, and these are reasonable questions for voters to ask, especially who are concerned about the secrecy of their votes, so to say. I wanted to ask Queenie a question, actually, if I may. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the process for a postal ballot to be sent back is you have to receive it, and then there are two forms, if I'm not mistaken, Borang A, Borang B, and they have to be signed and witnessed by a Malaysian of voting age, put back into separate envelopes, and then put into one envelope, sealed, and then sent. And that's a really complicated process, isn't it? I just wanted to ask you, if you had your way, right? If you suddenly became a prime minister, let's say tomorrow morning I wake up, you become prime minister, how would you change the postal voting system here in Malaysia? Or would you just scrap it entirely? What are your thoughts on this?
Firstly, I think if I were the prime minister, the whole election commission shouldn't be under my governance. So that would be beyond my power, because I don't think I should have anything to do with it. It should be an independent body. Yeah. But I don't think this process is too complicated. Like for the last time, it felt okay for me. But as we advance in technology, I hope to see improvements in that. So like for example, there are things in that borang where we already have that data in EC. So how we can so how people are automatically registered now. I hope that some part of that process could also be automated in the future, so that these processes for postal voters could be simplified. Yeah.
That's really cool. Was it hard for you to find a witness for your borang B?
It was not for me because I was studying, and there are a few Malaysian students in my school as well. Yeah.
I see. That's actually interesting because I've heard a lot of people, actually some people who were struggling to find witnesses. For some reason, if you're a postal voter, you need a witness to witness you signing a form. I don't think you have to witness to when you pangkah the ballot lah. But yeah, just another piece of information that shows how difficult it is to exercise your democratic right just because you're overseas. I mean, just because you're overseas doesn't mean you're not Malaysian. Certainly not, I don't think. Charlene, it is 10:59, I think. What's up?
Shall we take a look again at the but yeah, before that, I just want to thank Queenie as well for taking your time to be on this call, especially you're down with COVID. We really wish you a speedy recovery. Hope that you get well, feel better soon.
Thank you.
Yeah, get well soon.
Thank you
and
for
thank you
having me.
once again, yeah, for sharing your stories.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So yeah, let's again take a quick look at how it's going. I believe when we started, there was actually very few results coming in, but I can see that we already have about 60 something. Oh, 69 already. 70.
Nice.
Wow. Seats
Okay.
declared. That's about a third. We still have a long way to go. I guess it's a long night for Malaysia. And I'm also having a few other comments here coming in from YouTube. Thank you all for joining in. And also kind of want to remind everyone that we're currently running a bit of promotion for membership. If anyone's interested in joining up to access, we have a lot of resources on our website, explainers as well, articles, events and all that. So do check it out. The annual memberships are currently 50% off. Use the code NNFestive or check in on us on the website to find out how you can sign up for this. And yeah, actually, I believe we're sharing the link right now. But I did actually have a question for Daniel before before we wrap up and stuff. But actually, I was interested in how postal voting was done in Indonesia, whether or not it's actually different. After hearing the stories just now, you've heard Cameron, Queenie, all of us talk about it. Is it the same over there, or how is it? How is it like?
So again, to my knowledge, don't quote me on this, but I'm trying to remember from memory. I don't believe we have postal voting domestically. It is only for people who are citizens who live abroad. And even then, I think you have to request for postal voting. There's so there's no domestic postal voting. There's a big sort of negative sort of a sentiment around it regards to like the safety and the security of your vote. So a large majority of our citizens who are abroad go to consulates and embassies to vote. I believe in the presidential vote in 2019, it was around 2 weeks before we had the vote here domestically. They were already people were already coming into the embassy to start voting. I guess this is because we do set the dates for our elections very far ahead. Like for example, 2 years from 2024, we already know approximately when the election. So I believe that there's it allows for more planning. But I believe that it was even for me, like leading up to this discussion, I was trying to look for information for postal voting, and it was very, very difficult, and I couldn't find a lot of information about it. So I believe the preference for citizens abroad is to come to the consulate or the embassy and vote for themselves.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And for me, I guess also interesting to note, like in terms of, because from what I'm aware of, like Indonesia is huge, geographically speaking, and elections done over there would be like a great effort in coordination. So yeah, so hearing all these sort of differences, especially pointing out about like the domestic side of the postal voting and all of that, and how that's seen, I think that's a really interesting thing to bring up as well. But yeah, just thanks for that, Daniel. And I think we have something from about East Malaysian parties. Okay, let's see. Larry Singh held Julau, what the panelists think will be the role of East Malaysia parties in forming the new government, kingmakers. And actually, yeah, I mean, not just us, I guess, from if we have any East Malaysians watching right now, what do you think? Feel free to let us know through the comments as well. What do all of you feel on this? But yeah, I guess I'll open this up. Yeah, Cameron,
No,
you were saying
actually,
something.
I was about to ask, am I allowed to read out a different comment? I would. This is get ready the bingo. I would say everything so far is
You
lead
can
towards.
actually. In fact, Alif, if you want to highlight that comment, yeah, go ahead as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, sure.
Oh, you know the comment I'm going for. Well, okay. While Alif does that, I actually wanted to ask, is the system in Indonesia so if you have a pilkada and hello. Sorry. So the if you have a pilkada and you're electing both president and MPR, how does it work for a person? Let's say they were born in Jayapura, but they then moved to, I don't know, Gorontalo to go to school, and then finally came to Jakarta to work. How do they vote? How do they decide which area they are electing for? Like, especially if you're electing a DPD or you're a member of DPR. How does that work? Because in Malaysia, the thing with domestic postal voting is that it's been called upon a lot, especially for let's say East Malaysians that live in West Malaysia or West Malaysians that live in East Malaysia, because it's terribly difficult for them to fly across an ocean just to vote in their own constituency. So and that's why postal voting, we also don't have postal voting for domestic voters in Malaysia. So I wanted to know if what the arrangement was for Indonesia in that manner.
I believe so I believe that if you are not in the constituency you were born in and registered in. So I believe first is like you vote based on the constituency that you get your ID card in, your KTP. That's where they will sort of register as your constituency. If you have moved, for example, I was born in Sumatra and I was registered there, but I've moved to Java. I now live in Jakarta. You have to go to your sort of local regional head, I suppose. I don't know what the term is, but it's for Indonesians maybe in the chat who know what the international equivalent of RT RW is. That's sort of like a
I think it stands for Rukun Tetangga Rukun Warga, right?
Yeah, so it's sort of like a neighborhood, usually about like it's probably like the smallest denomination of like level of government, where it's usually just a few streets. It's smaller than regional, smaller than city, smaller than area, and then you have to ask them essentially, have them write a letter, and then that letter will be sent to your original constituency, and then the office of the constituency will have to receive that letter, acknowledge it, and then have you moved and have you registered in the constituency you are currently in, as like, oh, please look out on election day, the Daniel ID card number 1234 something will be there, which is again a lot of steps and quite difficult, and sometimes it's very difficult because RT RW is not there. It's not like an elected post. It's usually just like sort of the
Some
community
guy.
leader, some
Yeah.
guy, exactly.
Yeah.
And
I never knew the
for the last
Pak
election,
RT.
I
Yeah.
just went back to the constituency I was registered in because it was too many steps and it was quite confusing.
I never knew the Pak RT had so much power. It's like, like one day he imamkan salat, the next day he's confirming that this guy has moved. That's actually really interesting because in Malaysia, I think, and this was asked a lot around when the general election in Malaysia was being organized, right? It's like, oh, do I still have time to change my constituency because I haven't lived in Kedah for 10 years or something like that. A lot of people have stories like that. And the answer was usually no because the process was too laborious. But even for Malaysia, all you did was walk to JPN, Jabatan Pendaftaran Negara, and I think you present like a bill, something that it has your name and your address on it. So like a water bill or an electricity bill, and then they'd just be like, okay, cool, here's your new IC pay money, and you're sorted. Thank you, Daniel. Thanks so much for providing some insight on that. Also, that's the comment that I was talking about. So get the bingo card ready. I would say everything so far is leading towards a hung parliament, and the real contest here would be who is willing to build alliances. Will be interesting to see who. And I think that's relates to the question that Charlene mentioned, that came from PJ just now. But we will look at the bingo being okay. So you X'd it already. You wanted to watch that, but that's fine. As you can see, hung parliament has already.
Actually, I guess we can cross this out because yeah, one of my friends was complaining about panas gila at polling station earlier, so we can perhaps cross that one out. But basically, I think Danny was also asking me this question about like the setup and everything. I was lucky enough to go to vote at a center that was essentially a school, so we had like corridors and shades and all that. One of my friends, however, wasn't as lucky and had to basically take shade under an umbrella, which did little help against the fierce Malaysian sun lining up there too. So yeah, so there we go, panas gila at
Nice.
polling
That's
station.
interesting, Charlene, because most polling stations in Malaysia are schools, but if I'm not mistaken, in Lembah Pantai, this election, 2 football fields were turned into polling stations, which which was insane. The question was, what if it rained? And it did rain. Like for the main morning of polling day, it rained. And what if it's a if it's a football field with no grass, it's going to turn into mud. So there have been a lot of issues around that. There was also one I heard in SMK Taman C, C Park in Petaling Jaya, where there were 2 polling stations for 2 different constituencies in the same school, which blows my mind. Yeah,
That's interesting.
It is.
Yeah, I remember for like the Indonesian election a couple years ago, it was just sort of like a tent in the middle of a parking lot, because I believe that some polling stations, some RT RWs warrant their own polling stations, and sometimes it would be that small as well. So luckily, due to that, the line wasn't very long. But yeah, luckily also it didn't rain. But I can imagine if it rained, it would be quite difficult.
Nice.
I love how Alif at the back end is just really hard, at work trying to painstakingly cross out the bingo.
Let's get bingo, Lego. Do you want to take the question that PJ asked just now, Shirley?
Which one was it? The East Malaysian one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting question because I think at least and again, this is my personal opinion. I am again based in Klang Valley, smack in the middle of Peninsula, and this is basically where I've been all my life. And so a lot of my perspectives, I guess, or opinions are also shaped by people here in the Klang Valley. And I will say that a lot of those around me do have similar sentiments where they feel like yes, it does sound like East Malaysian side is very much going to be like, kingmakers in that sense. Interestingly enough, though, I do have a lot of friends who are also from East Malaysia, Which again ties into some of the things here at New Naratif, where we were thinking of doing organizing potentially more events, workshops, or democracy classrooms for Malaysians, because I honestly think it's really interesting to hear different perspectives from different people. So some of my friends who are East Malaysians have very, very different opinions. And they're fascinating because the way they see it is very different. The reasons they vote are very different. Their motivations are different. Possibly also because the context that they're voting in is different. Someone like me, for example, based in the Klang Valley, I'm voting for reasons perhaps like, let's say, the economy, or for reasons for like, I want certain policies to be made and that kind of stuff. Whereas to quote one of my friends actually from East Malaysia, he votes essentially because his family back there, they perhaps have certain they have livelihoods there, their businesses there, and they vote based on the policies made that have in his words, like, devastated their businesses there, and hence the way they vote is really different. So I don't know if any of them would feel that whole kingmaker thing, whether it resonates or not. But we've also heard again, some of my East Malaysian friends have said that they've casted votes just to kacau. They are just like, I feel like doing this because just to stir things up, or mix things up, and that's just how I'm going to be voting. And I feel, honestly, I feel like a lot of those emotions are really valid. So that's again my personal opinion on that, and it's not an expert answer, but just shedding some light on the interesting things that me and my friends have discussed leading up to the elections. Not sure about Cameron. How people
That
around
is
you
really
must.
interesting.
Yeah.
Well, one Sarawakian who volunteered at the Vote Malaysia Center did not go back to vote because essentially because he couldn't. He was, it's too much time and too much effort, especially considering that some of the constituency polling centers are all the way in the interior, where just even to take a bus, it's 10 hours. Tak termasuk the time that it takes to fly there from West Malaysia. But I think in a broader sense, it's actually very interesting that PJ mentioned that, because a lot of polling done, I think Merdeka Center is the most prominent one, but a few other polling places did do predictions for GE15, say that Pakatan Harapan are going to have the most seats, but won't have a simple majority to form government. Which means that, like a commenter said just now, that a lot of horse trading will be done. And since the fall of Sarawak BN after the 2018 election, there is room for the successor of Sarawak BN, which is Gabungan Parti Sarawak, to jostle around and look for new friends in Parliament when that when the results are in. What I heard from friends in the know is that it is unlikely that GPS will, for want of a better word, shack up with Pakatan Harapan, because there's a lot of beef between GPS and specifically Sarawak DAP, because I think that Sarawak DAP is usually seen to be the most, or at least for a time, the most potent opposition against Gabungan Parti Sarawak, especially Parti Pesaka Bumi Putra Bersatu and the Sarawak United People's Party in Sarawak. On a more personal level, one of my friends lives in Brunei, and I told her to go back to Miri. I actually haven't texted her. I should do that to see if she actually went to vote. But she did say that her cousin was telling her that she would solicit $50 bribes to vote whatever people told her to, which explains to you the state of voter education in Malaysia. Yeah. That's
I will
perspective from
also
my end.
I would like to highlight this though, and I think this has to do with like, again, geographical, the geographical context and everything. I think one of the questions I always had, and we always brought this up when I talked a lot with my East Malaysian friends, was, why does it cost so much for them to vote compared to me? if I were living and working here in Peninsular Malaysia, it would have been relatively easier for me. Let's say, I have friends who are going back to Perak, like their hometowns in Perak or Penang, and other peninsula states to vote. And it is, well, of course, yes, I think anyone on social media yesterday would have seen that traffic was horrendous. People were all jamming their ways back to vote, but it can still be done. Whereas we're seeing like flight tickets go up to like 800, 900, 1,000 ringgit just to fly back to Sabah and Sarawak to vote. And one of my friends, essentially, I remember mentioned, he was like, why do I have to pay? Why do I have to pay so much by virtue, just of having to vote there? And I guess this also ties into that whole, like I was asking Daniel just now about like how Indonesia votes, and it's in such a large country like Indonesia, like the costs or the logistics, I guess, would be like staggering as well. People just crossing over just to go home and vote and all that. And I've always asked myself that question. I've always just sort of wondered. It's like, to me, it screams a bit of unfairness. Just because I was born here, it's so much easier. Whereas for someone else, it isn't just geographically or physically harder. It could also be financially more difficult. So in that sense, I guess the votes are not, equal. But that's perhaps my slightly controversial opinion on the whole thing. But yes, I feel like there's definitely a lot of other factors involved. And then if you want to talk about that whole king-making, where usually that's the word thrown around, I suppose, every time during elections. Then we go back to the whole topic of like the electoral constituency, how it's drawn out, whether or not certain votes have more power to say, versus constituencies that have like millions of voters and only like one seat, So yeah, that's a whole other can of worms, I feel. And perhaps, something for whoever is incoming in the new government to look about. I think people will be watching it. I do feel like people will actually be pushing more for the whole like redrawing the map and all of that.
Do you think, Charlene, that there is an election promise on the cards? I think that's on the bingo card. There's an election promise on the cards about reforming voting for East Malaysians.
Was there anything specifically for, let's see, let's take a look at that.
I believe there are.
Promise of reform.
Reform was one of the keywords, I believe. But...
Promise of reform. I think it's on the rightmost column. Do you think there's a promise of reform on the cards there? I've made it super obvious, but I do agree with you, Charlene, that it's super difficult. And this was one of the things that I heard when around PRN Johor also. It's like, because I think for the Johor state election, they actually expanded postal voting so previously, if you were Singaporean or if you were Bruneian or if you lived in Patani, you were not allowed to be a postal voter, because I suppose the logic was it was too easy for you to get back home. Why do we need to provide for you? But then in this election, and maybe I think in PRN Johor, maybe PRN Johor was just Singapore, but in this election they did allow Bruneians, people who live in Patani, and also Singapore, Malaysians who live in Singapore to register as postal voters. But the question then that a lot of people asked, I think including people like Thomas Fan from Bersih, and I think Professor Wong Chin Huat, they were talking about, why don't we open up postal voting to West Malaysians living in East Malaysia or East Malaysians living in West Malaysia? Which is a very pertinent question, I would say.
Sorry, was muted, but yeah, that's definitely, I think, a very interesting thing to bring up as well. Yeah, the East-West Malaysian, geographical divide, I guess, and also political divide, which is why, again, going back to it, I always find it so fascinating to hear perspectives all the way from there. And I honestly think it's exactly why we should be expressing them more, sharing all of these thoughts, so that we can all, learn what's actually going on, over the straits, so to speak. We have, okay, we're actually over time. But I just really want to like thank everyone for tuning in with us so far and all that. But before we do wrap up, we just had this question come in. Indonesia tries to limit each polling station to 300 voters. Indonesia often has multiple polling stations close together. How does this work in Malaysia? I'm not too sure if Cameron knows about this. I'll be honest that I'm not too familiar with how polling stations are actually divided. I personally had a similar question myself this morning. Because as I mentioned earlier in the watch party, actually, my family, despite living in very similar addresses, were assigned to different polling stations. And each polling station clearly did not have the same volume of voters. For theirs, it was like super fast. For me and my siblings, it was like, a lot slower. The line was a lot longer. So yeah, again, I'm not sure if Cameron knows the answer to this one.
If I'm not mistaken, also thank you, Queenie. We're all supporting you in your recovery from COVID. To answer the question, if I'm not mistaken, so in one constituency is itself divided into localities and PDMs or Pusat Daerah Mengundi. And if I'm not mistaken, one Pusat Daerah Mengundi may have a few polling stations. But I'm not sure how they're divided, how many polling stations there should be in a PDM. What I do know is that PDM is a potent tool for campaigning. That's about it. But I do feel that it's quite interesting that each polling station is limited to 300 people. If we did that in Malaysia, we'd have like 3 million polling stations, I think.
That is true. That is true. In fact, I believe we have a bit of like that situation where we also have multiple polling stations close to each other. At least for my constituency, literally, we again, like in the example of my family, the polling stations were just minutes away, from each other. So yeah, but then again, I do have a very, very big constituency. So perhaps more polling stations were set up for that. I am not aware.
Where do you vote, Charlene? Do you want to dox yourself?
Oh, I mean, I could. Good luck finding it because my constituency is big. It's Seputeh. So yeah, seriously, good luck finding.
Okay.
It's huge, and I think again that whole like question of like, where do you define the borders for a constituency that big, like Seputeh as well. I mean, just for anyone who's unfamiliar with that constituency, you can just look it up online as well, see how many people are included under that constituency. Also, maybe see where the borders are drawn. I think you'll find it really interesting that it includes like a lot of neighborhoods. But yeah, so we do have a lot of voters, I guess. Yeah. Well, yeah. Follow up comment from Raka as well. 800,000 polling stations. That's a lot. Yep. So yeah, thank you again. We're I guess reaching the end of our watch party. Unfortunately, we did not get a bingo, but it's fine. I think we might actually continue filling this out among the team as the night goes on. Perhaps some people will start like calling for recounts, and then we can take those boxes off. But I just want to thank everyone for joining us with the watch party. I know it's getting late. Hope everyone has a good night. And also just a huge thank you to my co-hosts as well, Cameron and Daniel, for joining me on this. And to all Malaysians, good luck. I hope, when the morning comes, we'll wake up to the results that we all we want, I guess. Yeah. And a last minute reminder also to check out New Naratif's website. Once again, we are currently having an annual membership drive. So do check it out. It's your chance to grab membership for 50% off. And just input the code NNFestive. And you can access our lovely resources, all our articles, explainers, comics, also access our events. And we would see you, I guess, if you're interested to join any of our future events too, not just Malaysian focused, but also all over Southeast Asia. So thank you, everyone. Have a good evening. And yeah, take care.